Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of our Detrola 4-tube TRF radio. And as you can see, I've stripped the deck. And I did that a couple of reasons. One is I want to do a thorough restore. And this thing is pretty dirty. And, I can get it pretty clean. There's a lot of rust in here that I'm going to want to clean up. And if you recall, it had those tube shields on it. And that would have been really hard to get at. This way I could clean this thing pretty easily. And then coat it with. I'm actually considering painting it, and then using that to protect the metal. I haven't decided that yet. I have to see how it cleans up. But if there's any pitting or anything here, I'm just going to end up doing a light gray kind of chassis on it. So I haven't decided that yet. I've taken the time when I've disconnected everything to label all the wires, only because the schematic I have isn't really exact. So if I screw up something, I don't have a pretty good roadmap to go back on. So let's talk about what we removed. So first thing we took off was the transformer, and you'll see I've already painted this and have this in good shape. But the reason why I took this one off to start with, let me zoom you in here and show you. And here's an interesting situation. So here's our transformer hole, and you'll see there's a hole here, one here, and nothing here. Now, when this transformer was mounted inside the radio, like this, I noticed that it was crooked. It wasn't straight. And the reason why is because this hole is too big. So that made me wonder, was this thing replaced? Is it not the original transformer? I really have no way to tell that. But what I did find out was that Detrola, when they first started making radios, they were bringing in cheap labor like kids from schools, and I think I'm don't quote me on that, but I know there's some truth to some of that. So they would have a kid working on a radio in the morning, and then somebody else working on it in the afternoon, and that's how they put these things together. And I suspect what happened is when this radio was assembled, whoever built it didn't do this correctly. And, this hole was either cut out wrong. I'm sure they didn't have a good template for it. Or something else. I just don't know. Or this is a replacement. I really don't know the story, and I really don't care at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that transformer sits flush and straight in the chassis. But I did hear about them using temporary labor, and people were sharing, building radios like, half of them and then going on to something else. So that would be a problem. It's kind of like painting a portrait and then having somebody else finish it. So we got that out. And then the next thing we did is we took out the tuning cap, and the tuning cap is right here. And nothing really fancy about this one. Look underneath. Look at all that dirt. So we could really benefit from getting this cleaned up. This will work much better that way. So we'll put this in the ultrasonic cleaner with a little bit of citric acid, and get this thing back to where it needs to be. Nothing major there. We also have our antenna coil, which is right here, and the antenna coil mounts in this location right here. And again, I've checked all this out. I've ohmed it out. It works well. Only 3 legs of this thing were used. I've got documentation that I've marked, so we're going to put that back on when the time is right. Then we've taken off our sardine can, and this was mounted underneath the radio, and it's 4.1 microfarad caps. So I'm probably going to restuff this thing. There's a little bit of tar in the back. Just pop it with the heater. Take everything out. I can create new leads that come out for these things and just put this back in and mount it. So we're going to do that. And then that brings us to our last major piece that we've taken out, and we'll show you what that is. So let's move this chassis. And that's this tube shield configuration. But why is it important? Because I've got this. And I'm going to zoom in on this, and this is where I've got a little bit of a head scratcher. And I'm going to have to figure this out. So if you look very carefully at this, I'm going to see if I can point it out. This thing is marked with a positive sign right here. And there's also one here. So we've got something positive and negative. Now when I look at the schematic for this radio, if I look at where this thing was wired, all I could really see is it's this here. It's our output transformer.
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
So the problem is, I don't know what the value should be. And that's going to be a problem, because I don't know if it's good or bad. So I have to think about that one and how I would assess that. But if we try to measure it, so we know that there's a logical split down the middle, so these two sides are independent from these two sides. So you would assume one is a primary and one is a secondary. So let's measure this side first and see what we get. It's a little bit dirty here. I should have probably cleaned it first, but you'll see we're getting 3 meg. That doesn't sound right to me, and it's drifting all over the place. Let's check this side. This side I'm getting 800K. I almost feel like this is a capacitor. It could be the original electrolytic capacitors. I don't know. I just don't know. Matter of fact, let's measure it just for the hell of it. Anyway, I don't know what it is, so I have to do some research on the schematic. And again, let's look at this really closely. So let's assume that this is our output transformer. You'll see it does tie back here to our filter caps. So I don't know. I don't really know what that is yet. I'm going to figure it out. The filter caps that I took out of this thing were not original. Someone put those in. So it's quite possible that this is a filter cap. And someone had left it in circuit and put new caps in, and that's a no-no. And we're going to have to figure that out, but I'm going to see if I can nail that down. So anyway, enough on that one. I've got my work to do on that. I don't think it's an output transformer, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be getting readings like that. So something else is up there. So what's our next step? Well, the mystery is solved on this can. Let me show you how I figured it out. So I tried to take a reading on this thing with my capacitor meter. It's dead. There's nothing there. So I can only get a lot of resistance, which, you know, if it was a capacitor, that would be a problem. So I looked at how it's connected, and it's only connected with this rivet. So I went like this and was able to kind of move it around. And when I take a look underneath, look what I see here. Let me zoom on this so you can see it. And it says electrolytic condenser for DC only, type 440L, capacity 4 microfarads, working volts 400, peak volts 500. And so that means that this section is a 4 microfarad cap. You'll notice there's 2 sections here. Okay? So, if you remember, when I looked at the original schematic on this thing, I said the original schematic called for 4 microfarad caps. Let's show you that on the schematic. So now I have proof that this is original. So here's C7 and C8. They're both listed as 4 microfarad. So if I swing back here, here's my 2 electrolytics. When this radio, someone worked on it at some point, they put in 8s. It's supposed to be 4s. So that is definitely my electrolytic capacitor. Now I feel like an idiot for thinking it's an output transformer, because I looked on the speaker and it's mounted on the speaker. So I now have my electrolytics original. Now the problem with this is they had it wired in the circuit. And as you know, that's a no-no. You can't do that. So now we've got that mystery solved. So what I can do is I can restuff this thing with real capacitors and take this garbage out of here. And they just come right out of here. This is interesting. I've never seen one like this. This is an early electrolytic, I guess. This is before they had cans. Yeah, check that out. Pretty cool. And here's the second one. It's a 4. Let's see if we can get this out of here. Yeah, it's coming out. I'm amazed that these things haven't leaked, but then again, they're 90 years old and they're really dried up. This one's got some sign of heat, but there's our little cage. And here's our two 4 microfarad caps. So that's a pretty cool thing to have. Made mica mold in Brooklyn, New York. So I do recall when these things were mounted in the radio that they did have the negatives tied together. So that makes sense. Anyway, so that's where we are. So now we know what that is. Let's proceed. All right, now that we have the deck stripped here, we're going to see how good it cleans up. Now again, we're going to use some of this Mr. Green stuff. It seems to have done a good job before. I'm going to not be too worried about spraying it anywhere because you can always put this thing outside to dry. I'm going to let that sit for a minute and see how well it cleans up. I really do want to avoid stripping this thing and painting it and all that stuff if I can. And based on this area here, which is underneath the tuning cap, it's actually in pretty good shape. Let's see what we got here. Looks like it's mostly just surface dirt. A little bit of rusting. Let's try back here. Not bad. I'll keep working on it. I'll let you know how we do. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to do some de-rusting on this thing. This area right here is really bad. And I'm not sure why. You know, it's the area that was in this little tube house here. So I'm not sure why that's more rusty than the rest of the chassis, but it is. Okay, we've started the de-rusting process. We've got some naval jelly on here. We're going to let that sit, let that do its job, and come back and clean that up. In the meantime, we've cleaned up our tuning cap and the ultrasonic cleaner. Looks really sharp. We've replaced the 2 mica sheets that were here. They were very, very brittle, falling apart as I touched them, so I put new ones in there. I don't really know the value of them because the schematic doesn't tell you that, but we'll figure that out. So just waiting for this. We'll give you an update. Okay, so I've decided I am going to paint the chassis. Here's the tube shield cover and the capacitor can cover that was there. I've cleaned all that and I've painted it with it's Painter's Touch 2x primer and paint, and the color is granite satin. So it's a little bit darker, a little bit more of a battleship gray, but that's what we're going to use on this thing. So we're going to continue cleaning all the rust off. We'll mask off all the things we need to mask off, and then we're going to paint this entire chassis this color, which I think it's going to look great. It'll definitely preserve the metal, which is really all I care about. I'm not trying to make it look brand new. I'm trying to preserve it. So that's where we're going to go. I'll come back when this is all done. Okay, the chassis's got a coat of high temperature primer. Now I don't really need this because there's not a lot of high temperature coming out of this thing, but just in case I want it to be protected. And when this is all set and dry, it's not quite there yet, it's almost there, then we're going to come back and follow up with the granite color here. So that's done. It looks really smooth. I don't see any major imperfections. I see a few here where there was rust, but we're ready to spray paint this thing, and then we're going to begin the reassemble. So I'm going to spare you that for the rest of this video. So the next video, you're going to see this thing is painted. We're putting it all back together. I'll show you where I'm going to mount the electrolytic capacitors, such as these, and I'll show you how we do the wiring on the bottom, which right now is not much there. So that's kind of where we are. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Yeah, just one more thing before we wrap up. I did decide to go with a slightly different color for this whole thing. I just took a ride to Home Depot, and we're going to go with Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch, and the color is Winter Gray. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. It'll be nice. So we've got this all primed, and we have this all primed, and we'll give this a shot. This is actually pretty close to this already, but it's a little bit lighter. So that's what we're going to do. So I'll spray all this, let it cure for a couple days, And then by then I'll be doing the next video putting it all together. You guys take care.